everyone. Welcome to In the Cordon, the place where every cricketer wants to be. I'm your host, Callum Dunk, and thanks for joining me for another episode. Well, it was a very quick-fire test match between Australia and the West Indies in Jamaica, with Australia winning the test match by 176 runs. And um, the West Indies, unfortunately, on the last day were bowled out for 27, which is the second lowest score in Test cricket, and Mitchell Starc taking 6 for 9 and Scott Boland taking a hat trick. How great was it to see Scotty Boland back in the Australian lineup? And whenever he plays for Australia, he rarely disappoints. And, you know, the arguments will say that Scott Boland should have played earlier in the series. And as much as I love the great man, with Josh Hazlewood or any of the other three quicks are 100% fit, they certainly have to play ahead of Scott Boland. It's really unfortunate. He takes his opportunity every time he comes into the lineup, but Scotty Boland certainly showed his worth. 3 wickets in the first innings, 3 wickets in the second innings, including a hat trick. How awesome is that? There's a few sort of things that I want to touch on, and there's certain points of the test match that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail, but I'll start off with the Australian sort of stuff because I am Australian, and now that this series is complete, it does give us a sort of roadmap or sort of ideas about what might happen in terms of the Ashes going forward. And it's been a really tough series for the top order for both sides. 2 high-quality bowling attacks. We'll talk about the bowlers, obviously, later on in the episode. But in particular, I want to talk about Sam Constas. The kid is 19 years old, and he's not a finished product. However, from what I've seen in this series, I don't think he's ready for Test cricket. And for some players, I think this can be a really good thing to almost have a mini reset, you know, have a couple of years to find his feet at Shield cricket and then bounce back into the Australian side. If I was going to stick with one of these 2 openers at the moment, I'd be sticking with the kid. Time for Uzi to go. It's seriously, like, it's time. Love him. He's 38. He's been able to have a great second coming of his career post the age of 35 or 34 or whatever it was when he came back in the side. However, you can't keep carrying this guy who looks all at sea against pace and bounce and a high-quality bowling attack, which the West Indies were. The bowling wasn't what let them down in this series. It was their batting and their catching. But in terms of scores, he's only registered a couple of scores above 40 in his last sort of 10 test matches. It looked all at sea against Boomer in the Australian summer. He looked all at sea against Matt Henry when they went to New Zealand. He's looked all at sea at Lords in the World Test Championship final. Rabada, probably the best bowler in the world, or in the top 3 with Cummins and Cummins and Bumrah, sorry. He looked all at sea here against not Jasprit Bumrah, just done the Indian video, but against Shamar Joseph, Alzari Joseph, who was a lot better in this game, and Jaden Seals. All 3 of those fast bowlers are high quality. When you come to Australia and you're going to have a home Ashes and you're going to be starting at Perth, then going to Brisbane, 2 of the bounciest wickets in the country, and you're going to be playing against the likes of Gus Atkinson, Jofra Archer, potentially Mark Wood, Ryden Cass, Ollie Stone. Those are the quickest bowlers that I can think of in the English setup at the moment. He's going to find it extremely difficult. And I think they need to gentleman's agreement saying this is not working anymore. Obviously, we want to celebrate what Uzi has done for Australia, but at this point in time, we have to get specialist openers into the side. And to be honest, I don't think either of them should be playing in the Ashes. The fact that we don't have any openers in the country who are knocking the door down, and this has been a problem since David Warner's retirement, which I've harped on this podcast for a good 18 months. Even when David Warner was absolutely horrendously out of form, there was no one better to replace him with. And Davey was able to string a few good innings together before the end of his career. Could have Harris done that? Could have Bancroft done that? Could have Renshaw have done that? I don't know. It's going to be a genuine bat-off in the Sheffield Shield for who should get those two opening spots. But I also see the Australian selection panel being stubborn enough to keep going with these two. I don't know. But if an opener is in form in Sheffield Shield and can't get into the side ahead of these two, you know there's a problem with the Australian selectors. You know there's a problem with George Bailey, Andrew McDonald, or Pat Cummins, whoever does the selection. So that's my quick gripe about Khawaja. Cameron Green, I don't believe he's a specialist number 3, but in the last 2 games, he's looked heaps better. If you want this to work out long term, you got to stick with it. And look, there might be times where he finds it difficult because he's finding his feet in a new position. I liked the potential of Cameron Green at number 3. I think eventually over time he can evolve into that position. But at the same time, if they decided we're going to go and put him back at number 4 or number 5 or whatever, when we go back to Australia and get ready for the Ashes, that's fair enough. But how you rejig the order around to accommodate that, who knows? The Australians have got a good bowling attack. I've said this many, many times before. They've got them. The quicks have got them out of jail so many times, and the batters have not performed. It's been a lot lately. I'm not going to lie. It was tough batting conditions this series. Travis Head was the leading run scorer in this series with about 220 odd runs. It's not a lot in a 3 test match series, if I'm being perfectly honest, but I think it does show the high quality bowling from both teams that was the most amount of runs. Mitchell Starc, 100 test matches. Bloke is a seriously good player. I am critical of him at times because I think he can be wayward. But his ability to get wickets with the new ball is something that is so valuable for this Australian team when you've got the likes of Hazelwood, Boland and Cummins around to provide that tight line and length support. 6 for 9 is a seriously good effort. But it will go down as one of the best bowling sort of innings that I've seen in my life. I watched the highlights this morning as I woke up, and the way he was able to swing the ball, be so deadly to the right-handers, nick the ball away from the left-handers. It was just high quality stuff. We know he loves the pink ball. No surprises that he stood up with the pink ball here, and he's a serious danger and a serious prospect for the English top order because they're a fragile top order. I do apologise at the moment. This is so much towards Australia and looking ahead to the Ashes, but the West Indies fans, I will get to the positives for your team in just a moment. Once again, Scotty Boland, seriously good when he comes into the team. 3 for 30 odd in the first innings and 3 for 2, including a hat trick. Just outstanding figures. All right, let's talk about the Windies now because my God, the batting for the West Indies has been horrific this series, and it's a shame because if you actually had a great batting lineup or a half decent batting lineup, I think you could have pinched 1 or 2 of these test matches. I think the first test match in particular was the best performance from the West Indies. It was just that 4th innings run chase that, showed that the margin was 160 runs. And I didn't think that was a fair reflection of the game. They lost by a bit less in the second test match, but I still think the first test match, the performance was much better. The West Indies bowlers couldn't really have done that much more in this particular game. However, to be 5 for 2, um, to be 5 for 2, obviously Mitchell Starc just taking wickets for fun. I felt so sorry for Kevlon Anderson, who was the debutant for the West Indies. Um, Lewis and Campbell both got injuries on the first day, so Brandon King and Anderson had to go out to bat. Couldn't have been worse conditions for a person going out on debut to deal with. Pink ball, brand new pink ball, under lights. Mitchell Starc, who's the best ever person to bowl with a pink ball. It was such a rough debut. And we haven't even talked about the Australians electing to bat first and still leaving out Nathan Lyon, which I thought was extraordinary. But as you can see, the seamers dominated, so it was the right call. I want to talk about the send off that Jaden Seals gave to Mitchell Starc and how that sort of came back to bite them. Look, I'm all for banter and a bit of niggle in the game, and I've talked about it as I've just filmed the India and England video that we need banter and contest in Test cricket to keep it alive. People have been talking about the stuff between Shubman Gill and Zach Crawley for a couple of days now. It's great. We need it. It makes the game so much more interesting to watch because it's a genuine contest. The blokes are not liking each other and all that sort of stuff. I did think that it was a bit sort of rich coming from Jaden Seals to sledge someone in their 100th Test match, and a pretty pointed send off as well. But when you get bowled out for 27 and you cop the return treatment, I've got no sympathy for you whatsoever. And Mitchell Starc had every right to have a go at Jaden Seals there. And considering that you've been absolutely pantsed with the bat this series, I didn't think it was a great look for Jaden Seals. I think he's played really well throughout the series. It was just probably a moment that he'd like back, in my personal opinion. I want to talk about Alzarri Joseph. I was really critical of Alzarri Joseph in the lead up to this series in terms of his consistency with the ball. And the fact that they've got 3 high-quality seamers now, Seals, Alzarri, Shamar, Joseph, the core of them working together, I think if they can keep these guys fit and on the park, it's a really great sign for West Indies cricket moving forward. Alzarri took 5 in this third innings of the game, and it was the best pace and aggression that I've seen from him for a while. And I think with Shamar and Seals being able to bowl beautiful line and length, as well as, some hostile spells at time, I think Alzarri Joseph's role is to be the enforcer in this team. He can bowl seriously good wicket-taking deliveries. He can get smacked around the park at points, no different to Mitchell Starc in some ways, but I thought the way that he bowled in this particular game, he can really hold his head up high. Shamar Joseph, probably unlucky not to be named man of the series. I know that Australia won and Mitchell Starc had a very dominant performance in this third Test match, 7 wickets, but Shamar scored some useful runs in this series. I know it didn't lead to any wins for the Windies, but he took 8 wickets for the game, 4 in each innings. He took 9 in the first Test match in Barbados, and he took 5 wickets in Grenada. He finished with 22 wickets for the series. There's obviously been some talk about what's going on in Shamar's personal life, and obviously I don't want to get involved with that on this podcast, but so obviously must have been a very difficult time for him with these potential and I emphasize the word potential allegations. Um, so the fact that he's been able to stand up, provide a shining light for his team, and really lead the attack. He's played 11 Test matches now, and now he's just gone past that 50-wicket mark in Test cricket, which I think is a great achievement. And he had some words to say at the beginning of the series about Sam Constas and the way he wants to bowl against Australia, and he certainly backed it up. And it was something that the West Indies fans can get excited about. I remember the time, obviously, he was here and he took 5 for Adelaide Oval. He took the famous 7 for 68 at the Gabba. It brought hope and joy to West Indies cricket, and I really hope that this guy can get through his troubles that he's got off the field and be able to inspire the next generation of quicks in the West Indies. And I think the world of cricket is better when the West Indies are a great force, because they have so much flair and charisma with the way that they play. There are certain players for the West Indies who have stood up at points. I really like Shai Hope. I know he didn't have the greatest series with the bat, but I thought he did quite well with the gloves. I thought Brandon King showed some really good signs after playing a number of years of white ball cricket. Craig Brathwaite getting to 100 Test matches. I know he's had a lean trot of recent time, but he's still a very high quality player. They just need another opener to support Brathwaite for however many years he's got left. Someone really solid to bat at number 3, and then someone to be able to play that counter-attacking role at number 5 or number 6, the way that Travis Head sort of plays that role for Australia. So if the West Indies can find 3 really solid bats, I think this team could go to some seriously good places and be able to challenge, the likes of Australia more competitively. India, when they play in their home, when they play in the West Indies, I think they can challenge India. And, I know they were pretty disappointing against England last year in England, but you do hope that they're able to take it to the likes of those regular Test playing nations, and a world where West Indies is thriving in Test cricket is seriously good for world cricket. So overall, Australia did not play their best cricket throughout the series. However, they were good enough to win the series 3-0. Still a lot of problems for this Australian side, and I've been critical of this for a while. They've just had 1 or 2 players be able to deliver some great performances to get themselves out of jail. In this series, particularly, it was the bowling attack. No one with the bat really stood up, and they're going to need someone to do that when England come out to Australia in the next few months. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who has supported this video series about the Test series between the West Indies and Australia. I've really enjoyed covering this series. Obviously, it's been difficult with the time zones in Australia to keep up with it, but I've tried to do the best that I can, and I really hope that you've enjoyed the content throughout this series. And please stay tuned for the remaining Test match videos between India and England. It's a great Test series that's going on there, so make sure you stay tuned to the podcast and social media platforms for more reels and cricket content from around the world, and we'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.